Hello chums! I've already covered the Renault Kangoo as well as the Mazda CX-30 from the most recent update. However, there's one other car in the update that's slightly more performance oriented. That car is the current generation Aston Martin V8 Vantage. Even this car will have its detractors though. Part of the reason for this is that it's not quite so distinct from cars we already have in the game. The Vantage has exactly the same 4-litre twin-turbo V8 as the Mercedes-Benz AMG GT S, with exactly the same 502 horsepower, and it only weighs 40 kilograms less. They're both front-engined rear-wheel drive, both have a dual-clutch automatic gearbox with more gears than my dog has brain cells, both have a similar weight distribution, and they both even come from factory with a bit of downforce. So one could be forgiven for thinking that this Aston Martin is a little bit of a clone. However, if we drive both cars back to back, completely unmodified, there are some subtle differences, and they work in favour of the Aston Martin. The Mercedes has slightly more of a rearward weight bias, which makes the car feel very smooth. It's very progressive when transitioning to power oversteer, which is easy to control, though in some instances it can feel like the car doesn't want to turn in as much. You may also notice that the AMG is rather quiet. Meanwhile, the Aston Martin sounds much more naughty, with a more guttural exhaust sound, and some whooshy turbo sound effects to go with it. The weight is also slightly further forward, which gives the car a slightly more edgy vibe with more weight over the front wheels. It's still quite smooth in general, but it's just that bit more willing to kick the tail out, with less grip over the rear axle. It's easy to maintain a slide as well, making this a fun but forgiving car to drive. So, when unmodified, it's different to the AMG if you squint, but the difference has become much more obvious once you start upgrading the Aston Martin. The Vantage has a massive advantage in the form of a rear diffuser option. While it only looks like 2 eBay flaps have been glued to the pre-existing stock item, this gives the car a 100-point boost to both front and rear downforce, which when coupled with the stock downforce numbers and the usual front splitter and rear wing, it makes this car capable of more of the aerodynamic trickery than a Group 4 car. As a result, a Vantage at full tilt is capable of some frightening speeds through high-speed cornering sections. The raw stats are very impressive as well. While the AMG GT S ends up with a few extra horsies, it weighs more, and coupled with that massive downforce advantage, the Aston Martin is so fast around a track that it beats the GTS, the GTR, and could even rival the Black Series on pure pace. Even better still is the car's sound. Going back to the Mercedes, it doesn't sound bad by any stretch. The V8 revs to nearly 9,000 RPM and sounds suitably high-pitched at the top end, but it's still a tad muted and smooth. Now listen to the Vantage, it's like a monster truck. So, it's easy to drive stock, it's insanely capable once upgraded, and it sounds good in almost any configuration. All good things. However, the visual customization is also decent. It could certainly be more varied, which was the same complaint I had of the Renault Kangoo, but the splitter with canards, along with the custom wing options, allow you to make the true touring car out of what was already quite aggressive. The wide body is also similar to most others in the game, simply extending the mesh of the car outwards, but from head-on it looks suitably menacing and is very well suited to this car. The car is also a very good all-rounder. It can be left mostly stock to make for a good 600 performance point street car. It can be lightly race prepped for a 700 performance point touring car, or you can throw the entire bank balance at it for an 800 performance point GT car. It can handle whatever you ask of it, and even if it isn't the best choice for every occasion, there aren't too many cars that can pull off being a jack of all trades like this one does. So, that was my review of the Aston Martin Vantage, which has become one of the fastest sub 900 horsepower track cars in the game. How have you set up your Vantage? Did you keep it as a street car, or did you throw the kitchen sink at it? Are you happy with it, or would you rather have had the V12? Let me know in the comments for some of that wonderful engagement. If you enjoyed this video, I would very much appreciate your subscription. It'll make me feel like the bee's knees. Take care of yourself, and ta-ra.